The smoke had barely cleared before the hollow ache in Naomi Evans' chest took root, a pain more searing than the flames that had consumed everything she'd ever loved. Coughing as she fell to her knees in the scorched dirt of what was once her family homestead, she knew with terrible certainty that her life had ended alongside the lives of her parents, even as her own breath continued to fill her lungs. It was 1875, and the unforgiving Texas sun beat down on Naomi's back as she stared at the smoldering ruins. Every timber of the modest ranch house where she'd grown up now lay in charred heaps. The barn was nothing more than ash, and the animals, those that hadn't perished, had scattered to the four winds. Her mother's prized rose bushes were blackened stumps. The vegetable garden that had sustained them through lean times was a wasteland. Ma, Pa. She called again, her voice raw from smoke and screaming. But there was no answer, just as there had been no answer when she'd raced home from town to find flames licking the sky and no sign of her parents escaping the inferno. 3 days later, Naomi sat stiffly in the small church in Cottonwood Springs, dressed in the only black dress she owned, which Mrs. Holloway from the general store had kindly pressed for her. The coffins at the front of the church were closed. There hadn't been enough left of Thomas and Margaret Evans to present for viewing. "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away," intoned Reverend Phillips, his eyes sympathetic above his graying beard. "Blessed be the name of the Lord." Naomi couldn't bring herself to echo the amen that rippled through the congregation. The Lord had taken too much, and she wasn't feeling particularly blessed. Sheriff Miller had determined that a lantern must have overturned in the barn. The fire had spread so quickly that her parents, working inside, never had a chance. It was a tragic accident, he'd said, just one of those terrible things that sometimes happened out here in the frontier lands, but Naomi wasn't convinced. Her father had been methodical about safety, especially with fire. And something about the way Josiah Blackwell, the wealthy cattle baron who'd been pressuring her father to sell their land, had offered his condolences struck her as false. His eyes had been calculating even as he'd patted her hand at the funeral. "Such a shame," he'd said. "Your father was a stubborn man, but he didn't deserve this." Now, when you're ready to discuss the property, she'd pulled her hand away then, shock mingling with disgust at his callousness. As the last of the mourners filed out of the church, Naomi remained seated, uncertain where to go. The homestead was uninhabitable. She had been staying at the widow Cooper's boarding house, but her meager savings would only cover another week's lodging. Miss Evans. She looked up to see a man she didn't recognize standing in the aisle beside her pew. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a face tanned by long days under the sun. His clothes were trail-worn but clean dark pants, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. A cowboy, obviously, though not one who worked for any of the local ranches that she knew of. "Yes," she replied, her voice small in the empty church. "Name's Isaac Hart," he said, removing his hat to reveal hair the color of sun-bleached wheat. "I worked with your father once, some years back." "Just heard about what happened." His eyes, a clear blue like a summer sky, held genuine sympathy. "I'm mighty sorry for your loss." "Thank you," she said automatically, the words feeling hollow after repeating them dozens of times that day. He shifted his weight, hat still in hand. "I understand you've lost everything in that fire." The blunt statement should have hurt, but there was something refreshing about his directness after days of gentle euphemisms from well-meaning townsfolk. "Yes," she agreed simply. "Everything?" Isaac nodded slowly. "I've got a proposition for you, Miss Evans. I'm foreman at the Triple Creek Ranch now, about 30 miles north. We're looking to expand, and your father's land," he paused when he saw her expression harden. "I'm not here to take advantage, just hear me out." Naomi rose to her feet, prepared to walk away. "Mr. Hart, if you've come to buy my land while the ashes are still warm, you can join Mr. Blackwell in—" "No," he interrupted firmly. "That's not it at all. I want to help you rebuild." She stared at him, disbelief evident on her face. Your father helped me once when I had nothing, Isaac continued. I owe him a debt I can't repay to him now, but I can help his daughter. Why would you do that? Suspicion colored her voice. In her 22 years, Naomi had learned that nothing in this world came without a price. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because I know something about losing everything and having to start over. She studied him, trying to discern his true motives. His gaze remained steady, unflinching. You've lost your home to fire and grief, Isaac said softly. But you'll have both back, I promise. Something in his voice, a quiet certainty perhaps, or the echo of past pain, made Naomi pause. How? She asked finally. There's nothing left. There's land, he countered. Good land, and there are hands willing to work, mine included. We'll rebuild your house better than before, and as for the grief, he hesitated. Well, time helps with that, so does having a purpose. Naomi felt the first stirring of something besides despair. Not hope, exactly, it was too soon for that, but perhaps its distant cousin. What's in it for you, Mr. Hart? A slight smile touched his lips. Your father's land borders water rights that would benefit Triple Creek. I propose a partnership, not a purchase. You keep your land, we share the water, and I help you get back on your feet. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was, and yet. I need time to think, she said finally. Isaac nodded, placing his hat back on his head. Fair enough. I'll be in town until tomorrow afternoon, room 3 at Cooper's boarding house if you want to talk more. He turned to leave but paused. Miss Evans, I meant what I said about the promise. After he left, Naomi remained in the church, thinking. She had precious few options. She could sell to Blackwell, though everything in her rebelled at the idea. She could try to find work in town, perhaps as a teacher or shopkeeper's assistant, but wages were low and opportunities for single women limited. Or she could take a chance on this stranger with kind eyes who claimed to have known her father. That night, in her small room at the boarding house, Naomi removed a leather-bound journal from her carpetbag, one of the few possessions she'd had with her in town when the fire struck. It was her mother's recipe book, filled with handwritten notes and memories more precious than gold. As she turned the pages, a folded paper fell out, a letter she'd never seen before, addressed to her in her father's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, she unfolded it. My dearest Naomi, it began. If you're reading this, something has happened to your mother and me. I pray that day is far in the future, but a man must be prepared. Tears blurred her vision as she continued reading. Her father wrote of his love for her, his pride in the woman she'd become. And then a name jumped out from the page, Isaac Hart. If you ever need help and we're not there to provide it, seek out Isaac Hart. He was once a young drifter I took in during a hard winter. Now he's a good man and honorable. I saved his life. He saved mine during an Apache raid years later. There's no man I trust more outside of family. Naomi read the letter 3 times before folding it carefully and pressing it to her heart. Perhaps this wasn't chance after all, but providence. The next morning, she knocked on the door of room 3. Isaac Hart was ready to leave Cottonwood Springs. He'd saddled his horse and was just gathering the last of his belongings when the knock came. Opening the door to find Naomi Evans standing there, her chin raised in determination, made something shift in his chest. I found a letter from my father, she said without preamble. He trusted you. Isaac nodded slowly. Thomas was a good judge of character. I'm not, Naomi admitted, but I'm willing to learn. Tell me more about this partnership. They talked for over an hour. Isaac explained his vision. Rebuilding the Evans homestead while establishing shared access to the creek that ran along the northern border of her property. The Triple Creek Ranch needed that water for expansion, but Isaac was proposing a fair arrangement rather than the strong-arm tactics Blackwell was known for. I still don't understand why you wouldn't just buy the land outright, Naomi said finally. It would be simpler. Isaac's expression grew serious. Because I know what it means to have roots somewhere, to belong to a piece of land, not just own it. Your father understood that too. A memory surfaced, her father standing at the edge of their property at sunset, looking out over the grasslands with quiet pride. "This is ours, Naomi," he'd said. "Not just to use, but to cherish, to protect." "I accept your offer," she said quietly, "but I want everything in writing, and I want to be involved in every decision about rebuilding." A smile broke across Isaac's face, transforming it. "I wouldn't have it any other way, Miss Evans." "Naomi," she corrected. "If we're to be partners, Mr. Hart, you should call me Naomi." "Isaac," he returned, extending his hand. When their palms met, Naomi felt the calluses that spoke of years of hard work. His grip was firm but gentle. "Trustworthy hands," her father would have said. They left town that afternoon. Naomi had few possessions to pack, just her mother's recipe book, the clothes on her back, and a small bundle of necessities Mrs. Cooper had donated. Isaac insisted on buying her proper riding gear before they departed, ignoring her protests about the expense. "It's a long ride to Triple Creek," he explained as he paid for sturdy boots that actually fit her feet, "and longer still to your property from there. You'll need these." The journey took 3 days. They rode at a steady pace, stopping to make camp as the sun set each evening. Isaac was respectful, always ensuring Naomi had privacy and comfort as much as possible on the trail. He was also surprisingly easy to talk to, sharing stories about his years as a cowboy that made the miles pass quickly. "How did you meet my father?" Naomi asked on the second night as they sat before a small campfire. The spring air was cool and she wrapped her arms around her knees, grateful for the warmth of the flames. Isaac poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it to her. "I was 18, broke, and half-starved when I stumbled onto your father's property. It was winter, 1865. I'd just been discharged from the Union Army and was heading west, looking for work. You fought in the war." Naomi had been 12 when the conflict ended, old enough to understand its significance but young enough to be sheltered from its horrors. "Last year of it," Isaac nodded. "Lied about my age to enlist, thought I was being patriotic." A shadow crossed his face. "Found out war isn't what the stories make it out to be." He fell silent for a moment, staring into the fire. Naomi waited, sensing there was more to the tale. "Anyway," he continued finally, "your father found me collapsed at the edge of his property. Brought me in, fed me, gave me work until I got my strength back, never asked for anything in return." Isaac looked up, meeting her eyes across the flames. That was the kind of man Thomas Evans was. "Yes," Naomi agreed softly, feeling the ache of loss anew. "He was. He talked about you often," Isaac said. "How smart you were, how you'd read every book in the house twice over, how you had your mother's gentle heart but his stubborn streak." Tears pricked at her eyes. "He was right about the stubborn part." Isaac's laugh was warm. "I'm counting on it. It takes stubborn to survive out here." On the third day they crested a hill and Isaac reined his horse to a stop. "There it is," he said, gesturing to the valley below. "Triple Creek Ranch." Naomi drew in a breath at the sight. It was larger than she'd imagined, a sprawling main house, several outbuildings, corrals filled with horses, and cattle dotting the surrounding pastures. Beyond the immediate ranch buildings stretched acres of grassland, interrupted by the silvery threads of the 3 creeks that gave the place its name. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "Mr. Pearson, he owns the place, built it from nothing 10 years ago," Isaac said, pride evident in his voice. "Hired me as foreman 4 years back. Good man to work for." As they rode into the yard, ranch hands paused in their tasks to nod respectfully at Isaac. A few cast curious glances at Naomi, but no one was bold enough to question her presence directly. A tall, silver-haired man emerged from the main house, shielding his eyes against the afternoon sun. "Hart, beginning to think you decided to stay in Cottonwood Springs." "No chance of that, Mr. Pearson," Isaac called back as he dismounted. He helped Naomi down from her horse before making introductions. "This is Miss Naomi Evans. Miss Evans, this is Elijah Pearson, owner of Triple Creek." Pearson's weathered face creased in sympathy. "Miss Evans." Isaac told me about your situation before he left. My deepest condolences." "Thank you, Mr. Pearson," Naomi replied, suddenly aware of her travel-worn appearance in the face of his neat attire. As if sensing her discomfort, a woman appeared in the doorway behind Pearson. She was perhaps 50, with kind eyes and a practical manner. "Elijah, don't keep them standing in the yard after such a long journey. Miss Evans must be exhausted." "You're right, as always, Martha," Pearson agreed. "Miss Evans, my wife, Martha Pearson." Martha came forward and took Naomi's arm. "Come inside, dear. I've prepared a room for you, and there's hot water for washing up. You must be saddle sore and dusty to the bone." The motherly concern in her voice nearly undid Naomi's composure. She managed a grateful nod as she allowed herself to be led inside. The Pearson home was comfortable rather than ostentatious, filled with solid furniture and touches that spoke of Martha's attention to detail: embroidered cushions, carefully arranged wildflowers, polished wood surfaces that gleamed in the lamplight. "Isaac explained your circumstances," Martha said as she showed Naomi to a bedroom at the back of the house. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need while you sort things out." "That's very kind," Naomi said, "but I don't want to impose." Martha waved away her concern. "Nonsense. Any friend of Isaac's is welcome here." She hesitated, then added gently, "I lost my parents young too. It's a hard road, but you're not walking it alone." After Martha left, Naomi sank onto the bed, overcome by the unexpected kindness of strangers. For the first time since the fire, she allowed herself to cry freely for her parents, for her lost home, for the uncertain future that stretched before her. Later, washed and changed into a simple dress Martha had lent her, Naomi joined the Pearsons and Isaac for dinner. The conversation flowed easily around her as the men discussed ranch business and Martha inquired tactfully about Naomi's skills and interests. "I can cook and sew," Naomi offered. "I helped my mother with the vegetable garden and preserving. And I kept the accounts for my father's business dealings." Isaac looked up with interest. "You're good with figures?" "Very," she confirmed. "Pa always said I had a head for numbers." Isaac and Pearson exchanged a glance. "We could use help with the ranch accounts," Pearson said thoughtfully. "Cattlemen aren't generally known for their bookkeeping skills." "I'd be happy to assist," Naomi said quickly, relieved at the prospect of earning her keep. "It's the least I can do for your hospitality." Later, as the evening drew to a close, Isaac walked with Naomi to the porch. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the black velvet sky. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'd like to ride out to your property, see what we're dealing with, start making plans." "So soon?" "No sense waiting. Spring's the best time to build." He glanced at her profile in the moonlight. "Unless you need more time." Naomi considered this. Part of her dreaded seeing the ruins again, confronting the physical evidence of all she had lost. But another part, the stubborn part her father had recognized, wanted to begin moving forward. "No," she decided. "Tomorrow is good." The next morning dawned clear and cool. After a hearty breakfast, Isaac and Naomi set out, accompanied by two ranch hands Isaac introduced as Caleb Johnson and Will Tucker. "Caleb's our best carpenter," Isaac explained as they rode. "And Will has a knack for stonework. They'll help us assess what's needed." The familiar landscape tugged at Naomi's heart as they approached her family's land. The rolling hills, the stands of oak trees, the meandering creek, all unchanged despite the upheaval in her life. But as they crested the final rise, the charred remains of the homestead came into view and Naomi's throat tightened. Isaac drew his horse alongside hers. "You all right?" she nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They dismounted by what had once been the front gate. The main house was gone completely, just a blackened foundation remaining. The barn was similarly destroyed. Only the stone well and the distant boundary fences had survived the inferno. Caleb and Will moved immediately to the house foundation, examining it with professional interest and discussing technical matters in low voices. Isaac remained at Naomi's side, giving her time to absorb the scene. It's strange, she said finally. I grew up here, but now it's like looking at a stranger's property. It won't feel that way for long, Isaac assured her. Once we start rebuilding, you'll see it come back to life. Naomi walked slowly around the perimeter of where the house had stood. In her mind's eye, she could still see it, the whitewashed walls her father repainted every spring, the porch where her mother had taught her to shell peas, the window of her bedroom that looked out over the eastern pasture. We can salvage some of the foundation stones, Caleb called over. Save time and materials. What about location? Isaac asked, following Naomi. Same spot, or would you prefer to build elsewhere on the property? The question caught her off guard. She'd assumed they would simply rebuild where the house had been, but the idea of choosing a new location, of making this first crucial decision about her future, was unexpectedly empowering. I'd like to move it, she said slowly, turning to look at a gentle rise about 100 yards away. There, I think, it gets the morning sun and it's closer to the creek. My mother always said she wished the house was nearer to water. Isaac nodded approvingly. Good choice. Better drainage there too. He called the men over and outlined Naomi's preference. We'll need to clear it, lay a proper foundation, Caleb said, squinting at the site. But it's doable. Good spot. What about the barn? Isaac asked Naomi, and so it went through the morning and into the afternoon. They walked the property, making plans, with Naomi growing more confident in her decisions as the men treated her choices with respect. By the time they mounted up to return to Triple Creek, a rough plan had been sketched, and Naomi felt a tentative seed of hope taking root. We'll start next week, Isaac said as they rode. Caleb and Will can begin clearing the site. I'll arrange for lumber delivery from the sawmill in Preston. How long will it take, Naomi asked, to get you a solid roof over your head? 4 to 6 weeks, depending on weather and how many hands I can spare from ranch duties. He glanced at her. It won't be fancy at first, just the basics, but we can add on as time allows. I don't need fancy, she assured him, just a place that's mine. That evening, after dinner, Naomi worked in the ranch office, examining the account books Pearson had provided. The system was functional but basic, and she quickly saw ways to improve it. She was so absorbed in her task that she didn't hear Isaac enter until he placed a cup of coffee at her elbow. You've been at it for hours, he observed. She looked up, blinking. I lost track of time. Your ledgers are interesting. A smile tugged at his mouth. That's a polite way of saying they're a mess. They could use some organization, she agreed, returning his smile. But the fundamentals are sound. Triple Creek is doing well. Pearson built something special here, Isaac said, leaning against the desk. It's what I aspire to someday. Your own ranch, he nodded. Been saving for it. Another few years, maybe. Is that why you want the water rights on my property? Naomi asked, her tone curious rather than accusatory. Isaac considered her question. Partly, he admitted. Water's life out here, as you know, but mainly I want to help Triple Creek expand. Pearson took a chance on me when others wouldn't. I owe him. Because of what happened after the war, Naomi ventured, remembering his earlier reticence on the subject. A shadow crossed his face. That's a story for another time. He straightened, changing the subject. How are you settling in? Better than I expected, she confessed. The Pearsons are very kind. They're good people. Isaac hesitated, then added, I was thinking we could ride to your property again tomorrow, just the two of us. There are some decisions about the house layout that need your input. Naomi felt a flutter of something that wasn't quite nervousness. I'd like that. The next morning they set out early. The ride was pleasant, with Isaac pointing out landmarks and sharing stories about the region's history. Naomi found herself laughing at his tales of cowboy mishaps and frontier characters. You're good at that, she observed as they neared her property. At what? Making people feel at ease, telling stories, he shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. Comes from years on cattle drives. Not much to do around the campfire except talk. At the property, they dismounted and walked to the site Naomi had chosen for the new house. Isaac had brought paper and pencil, and they sat under the shade of an oak tree to sketch the layout. 2 bedrooms, he suggested. Or 3. 2 is plenty for now, she said, then blushed slightly at the implication of for now. If Isaac noticed, he didn't comment. Kitchen here, he said, marking the paper. Good size. You mentioned your mother liked to cook. She did, Naomi confirmed, watching as the house took shape on paper. Pa built her special shelves for her preserves. We can do that, Isaac nodded. What about a sitting room, separate from the kitchen or combined? They worked together easily, with Isaac offering practical suggestions based on his carpentry knowledge and Naomi making decisions about the details that would make the house a home. The sun climbed higher as they talked, and eventually, Isaac set the paper aside. Let's take a break, he suggested. I brought food. They shared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried apples, sitting in the dappled shade. The conversation flowed naturally from plans for the house to more personal topics. Tell me about your parents, Isaac said. I knew your father, but only briefly. Naomi's smile was wistful. Pa was stubborn, as you know, but fair. He believed in hard work and honesty above all else. She plucked a blade of grass, twisting it between her fingers. Ma was gentler. She loved beauty, grew flowers even during the drought years, said the soul needs nourishment as much as the body. They sound like good people. They were. Naomi glanced at him. What about your family? Isaac's expression grew distant. Lost my mother when I was young. My father was a blacksmith in Missouri. Good with his hands, not so much with words. He died while I was at war. I'm sorry, Naomi said softly. He nodded acknowledgement. Been on my own since then, until Triple Creek. Found family, Naomi suggested, something like that. He met her eyes. That's what your father offered me, brief as my stay was. A sense of belonging. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of shared understanding, of mutual loss and resilience. Naomi looked away first, suddenly aware of the quickening of her pulse. We should get back to planning, she said, reaching for the paper. They worked until mid-afternoon, finalizing the house design and making lists of materials needed. As they prepared to leave, Naomi took a final look at the site where her new home would stand. It feels real now, she said. Like it might actually happen. It will happen, Isaac assured her, his voice firm with conviction. I promised, remember. The following weeks fell into a pattern. Naomi spent mornings at Triple Creek, organizing the ranch accounts and helping Martha with household tasks. Afternoons often found her riding with Isaac to oversee progress on her homestead, where Caleb and a rotating crew of ranch hands worked steadily. The foundation was laid, first solid stone that would last generations. Then the frame began to rise, sturdy oak timbers forming the skeleton of what would become her home. Each day brought visible progress, and with it, Naomi's spirits lifted. You're smiling more, Isaac observed one evening as they rode back to Triple Creek, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. Am I? Naomi hadn't noticed the change in herself. It suits you, he said simply, then nudged his horse forward as if embarrassed by the observation. Naomi felt a warm flush rise to her cheeks. Over the weeks, her feelings toward Isaac had evolved from cautious gratitude to genuine admiration, and something more complex that she wasn't ready to name. He was unfailingly kind, competent without being arrogant, and possessed of a quiet strength that reassured rather than intimidated. But grief still shadowed her heart, and guilt accompanied any moment of happiness that wasn't tinged with memories of her parents. It seemed disloyal somehow to find joy when they were gone. That night, unable to sleep, Naomi slipped outside to sit on the porch swing. The ranch was peaceful under the starlight, the only sounds the distant lowing of cattle and the soft chorus of night insects. Trouble sleeping. Isaac's voice came from the shadows. She started slightly, then relaxed as he stepped into view. Just thinking. He settled beside her on the swing, careful to leave appropriate space between them. About the house, about my parents, she admitted. I keep wondering what they would think of all this, of me rebuilding, moving forward. Isaac was quiet for a moment. From what little I knew of your father, I think he'd be proud. He wasn't a man who gave up easily. No, he wasn't, Naomi sighed. I miss them. But today, at the homestead, I realized I'd gone almost an hour without thinking about them, and then I felt terrible for forgetting, even for a moment. That's not forgetting, Isaac said gently. It's healing. There's a difference. His words lodged in her heart, simple but profound. When did you get so wise, Cowboy? She asked, attempting lightness, not wisdom. Experience. The swing creaked softly as he set it in motion with one foot. After my father died, I carried guilt for not being there, for enlisting, for choosing war over family. Took me years to forgive myself. And have you forgiven yourself? The question hung between them. Isaac's profile was thoughtful in the moonlight. Most days, he said finally. Some days are harder than others. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the gentle rhythm of the swing soothing. Isaac, Naomi said eventually, you never finished telling me about how you met my father. You said he found you collapsed on his property, but what happened after? A soft chuckle escaped him. He dragged me to the house, literally dragged me. I was too weak to walk. Your mother wasn't too pleased to have a half-dead soldier dripping mud on her clean floor. That sounds like Ma, Naomi smiled. But she fed me anyway, Isaac continued. Best stew I'd ever tasted. I stayed 3 months helping with winter chores while I got my strength back. Your father taught me about ranching. I'd been raised in town, didn't know a thing about cattle or horses. So he's the reason you became a cowboy, in a way, Isaac nodded. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself. Said I had a natural way with animals, that I should consider ranch work instead of drifting. He glanced at her. You have his eyes, you know, same way of looking straight through a person. The observation, delivered so matter-of-factly, made Naomi's breath catch. I do, MMM. Isaac seemed to realize the conversation had shifted into more personal territory and stood abruptly. It's late. We both should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. Roof beams are going up. Yes, of course, Naomi agreed, rising as well. Good night, Isaac. He tipped his hat slightly, a gesture that had become familiar. Good night, Naomi. As she lay in bed that night, Naomi found herself thinking not of her grief, but of the way moonlight had silvered Isaac's profile and how his voice had softened when he spoke of her father's influence on his life. The house progressed rapidly over the next 2 weeks. The roof was completed, windows installed, and interior walls framed. Naomi chose simple furnishings from the general store in Preston. Using some of the insurance money that had finally arrived from the company her father had wisely contracted with years earlier. One afternoon, as she was arranging kitchen items in the newly finished cupboards, Caleb approached with a small wooden box. Found this while clearing the old foundation, he said, holding it out. Must have been protected somehow, thought you'd want it. Naomi took the box with trembling hands. It was her mother's jewelry box, scorched on one side but intact. Inside, she found her mother's wedding ring, a cameo brooch, and a silver locket containing miniature portraits of her parents as young people. Thank you, she whispered, clutching the box to her chest. Caleb nodded awkwardly and retreated, leaving her alone with this unexpected treasure from the past. When Isaac found her an hour later, she was still sitting on the porch steps, the open box in her lap. Caleb told me, he said, settling beside her. That's quite a find. It's like a message from them, Naomi said softly, a reminder that not everything was lost. Isaac's hand covered hers briefly, warm and reassuring. Your house will be ready for you to move in next week, just in time for summer. The realization struck her suddenly. I won't be at Triple Creek anymore. No, he agreed, and she thought she detected a note of regret in his voice. But I'll still be overseeing the completion of the barn and outbuildings, and there's our water sharing agreement to formalize. Of course, Naomi nodded, trying to ignore the hollow feeling that had appeared at the thought of no longer seeing Isaac daily. He cleared his throat. Actually, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you, about Blackwell. The name sent a chill through her. What about him? There are rumors in town, Isaac said carefully. That he's not pleased you're rebuilding instead of selling, that he's made threats. What kind of threats? Naomi's voice sharpened. Nothing specific, just saloon talk about how the Evans property should have been his by now. Isaac's eyes were serious. I don't want to alarm you, but I think we should be cautious. Maybe keep someone at the property even after you move in, just for a while. You think he had something to do with the fire, Naomi said, the suspicion she'd harbored from the beginning suddenly validated. Isaac didn't confirm or deny. I think Blackwell is a man used to getting his way by whatever means necessary. Naomi thought of her father's methodical nature, of the timing of the fire just when Blackwell's offers had become more insistent. If he was responsible, we have no proof, Isaac interrupted gently. And accusing a man like Blackwell without evidence is dangerous. So we do nothing. The injustice of it burned in her chest. We stay alert, Isaac corrected. We protect what's yours, and if evidence comes to light. His expression hardened. Then we seek justice. The we in his statement didn't escape Naomi's notice. Despite her anger at Blackwell, she found comfort in knowing she wasn't facing this alone. Moving day arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures, perfect weather for the task ahead. Martha had helped Naomi pack her few belongings, adding generous gifts of household linens and kitchen necessities to get you started. The Pearsons insisted on accompanying her to the new house, making the journey a small procession. Naomi and Martha in the wagon loaded with supplies, Pearson and Isaac on horseback, and several ranch hands following with additional furniture and building materials for the ongoing work on the barn. As they approached, Naomi felt a surge of emotion at the sight of her new home. It was smaller than the original house but solidly built, with a welcoming porch across the front and windows that gleamed in the morning sun. A thin wisp of smoke already rose from the chimney. Someone had gone ahead to light a fire in the hearth. "What do you think?" Isaac asked, reining in beside the wagon. "It's beautiful," Naomi said honestly, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I never thought that you'd have a home again." He finished softly. She nodded, unable to find words for the mixture of grief and gratitude that filled her heart. The day passed in a flurry of activity. Furniture was arranged, supplies unpacked, and the house gradually transformed from an empty structure to a living space. Martha supervised the kitchen setup with practical efficiency, while Pearson and Isaac attended to outside matters like ensuring the well pump was working properly and the new corral was secure. By late afternoon, the essential tasks were complete. The Pearsons prepared to return to Triple Creek, leaving two ranch hands, Tom and Miguel, to camp near the barn site as protection against any potential threats. "You're sure you'll be all right?" Martha asked, clasping Naomi's hands. "You could still come back with us just until everything is more settled." "I'll be fine," Naomi assured her, though the prospect of her first night alone in the new house was daunting. "Tom and Miguel are nearby and I have Pa's shotgun." Martha embraced her warmly. "You've become like family to us, dear. Don't be a stranger." Pearson's farewell was more reserved but equally sincere. "Triple Creek's books have never been in better order," he said, shaking her hand. "The position remains open if you ever need it." Isaac was the last to leave, lingering as the others mounted up. "I'll ride out tomorrow to check on the barn progress," he said, "and to see how you're settling in." "Thank you," Naomi said, suddenly awkward in the face of his imminent departure, "for everything." "I don't know how I can ever repay, no repayment necessary," he interrupted gently. "Your father would have done the same for me." He tipped his hat and turned to go, but Naomi called after him. "Isaac," he looked back, waiting. "I've been thinking about what you said. About healing not being the same as forgetting." She took a deep breath. "I think this place, this new home, it's part of that healing, and I wouldn't have it without you." Something flickered in his eyes, warmth, perhaps, or something deeper. "Good night, Naomi," he said softly. "Sleep well in your new home." That night, alone in the house for the first time, Naomi felt the full weight of both loss and possibility. The room still smelled of fresh cut wood and new paint. The furniture was sparse but functional, It wasn't the home she'd grown up in, but it was hers. She placed her mother's jewelry box on the small table beside her bed and ran her fingers over the carved lid. "I miss you both," she whispered to the empty room, "but I'm trying to be strong like you taught me." Sleep came more easily than she'd expected, the exhaustion of the day pulling her into dreamless rest. She woke to birdsong and sunlight streaming through the curtainless windows. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings. Then memory returned, and with it, a strange mix of sadness and anticipation. After a simple breakfast, Naomi stepped onto the porch with a cup of coffee, surveying her land in the morning light. Tom and Miguel were already at work on the barn foundation, their hammers creating a rhythmic backdrop to the day. She had just decided to begin unpacking the books Martha had contributed to her meager library when she spotted a rider approaching from the north, not from the direction of Triple Creek. As the figure drew closer, her grip on the coffee cup tightened. Josiah Blackwell. He rode a magnificent black stallion, his tailored clothes and polished boots a stark contrast to the practical attire of the ranch hands. His silver hair and trim beard gave him a distinguished appearance that belied his reputation for ruthlessness. "Miss Evans," he called as he drew rein before the porch. "What a pleasant surprise to find you here. I'd heard rumors you were rebuilding, but I scarcely believed them." Naomi set her cup down carefully. "Mr. Blackwell, this is private property." "Indeed it is," he agreed, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Valuable property. May I?" He gestured toward the porch steps. She hesitated, then nodded stiffly. Denying him would only postpone the inevitable confrontation. Blackwell dismounted gracefully for a man of his years and ascended the steps. His gaze swept over the new house, assessing. "Fine workmanship. Triple Creek's carpenter, I assume? Isaac Hart has a good eye for talent." The casual mention of Isaac's name put Naomi further on edge. "What do you want, Mr. Blackwell?" Directness. "I appreciate that in a woman." He turned to face her fully. "I want what I've always wanted, Miss Evans, this land. It's the missing piece in my holdings, the key to controlling water rights for the entire valley." "It's not for sale," Naomi said firmly. "Not now, not ever." Blackwell sighed as if disappointed by her predictable response. "Your father said the same thing, right up until the end." The implication in his words sent a chill down Naomi's spine. "The fire was an accident," she said, but doubt colored her voice. "Was it?" Blackwell raised an eyebrow. "How convenient that it occurred just when your father was being particularly obstinate." Naomi fought to keep her expression neutral despite the anger flaring within her. "Are you confessing to something, Mr. Blackwell?" he laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "My dear girl, I'm merely observing that unfortunate accidents seem to befall those who stand in the way of progress." His eyes hardened. "This is your only warning, Miss Evans. Sell to me at a fair price, or risk discovering how dangerous frontier life can be for a woman alone." Before she could respond, Tom and Miguel appeared around the side of the house, tools in hand. They assessed the situation quickly, moving to flank Naomi on the porch. "Everything all right, Miss Evans?" Tom asked, his hand resting meaningfully on the knife at his belt. "Mr. Blackwell was just leaving," Naomi said, finding strength in their presence. Blackwell's smile returned, cold and calculating. "Indeed I was. Think on what I've said, Miss Evans. My offer remains open for now." He tipped his hat mockingly and returned to his horse. As he mounted, he added, "Give my regards to Hart. Tell him to be careful riding alone. The trails can be treacherous this time of year." The threat, thinly veiled, made Naomi's blood run cold. She watched in silence as Blackwell rode away, his straight back and proud posture a testament to his confidence in his own power. "Want us to follow him, make sure he leaves the property?" Miguel asked, his dark eyes concerned. "No," Naomi decided after a moment. "Let him go." "But thank you both for coming when you did." "Mr. Hart told us to keep an eye out," Tom explained. "Said Blackwell might cause trouble." Naomi nodded, her mind racing with implications. Blackwell's visit confirmed her suspicions about the fire, but proving it would be nearly impossible. And now he had threatened Isaac as well. When Isaac arrived several hours later, Naomi was waiting anxiously. She told him of Blackwell's visit, omitting nothing. He as much as admitted causing the fire, she concluded, pacing the small sitting room while Isaac listened gravely. And then he threatened you directly. Isaac's expression remained calm, but Naomi noticed how his hands tightened on his hat. Blackwell's dangerous, he agreed, but threatening me was a mistake. It gives us warning. Warning of what? That he might try to kill you. Naomi's voice rose in distress. Isaac, this is serious. Perhaps we should go to Sheriff Miller with what evidence? Isaac shook his head. Blackwell's too careful to leave any, and he has the sheriff in his pocket anyway. Then what do we do? Frustration and fear warred within her. I won't sell to him, I can't, not after what he did to my parents. Isaac crossed the room to stand before her, his presence steady and reassuring. We protect what's yours, we stay vigilant, and we find evidence if it exists. How? I have an idea about that. He guided her to the small sofa, sitting beside her. One of Blackwell's former hands works for Triple Creek now, Jed Collins. He left Blackwell's employ around the time of the fire. Said he didn't agree with certain practices. I've always wondered what he meant by that. Hope flickered within Naomi. You think he knows something? Worth asking. Isaac nodded. I'll speak with him when I return to the ranch. The conversation shifted to progress on the barn, but an undercurrent of tension remained. As Isaac prepared to leave, Naomi walked him to his horse. Be careful, she said, unable to hide her concern. Blackwell's threat, I've faced worse than Josiah Blackwell, Isaac assured her, his voice gentle, but I'll take extra precautions. Impulsively, Naomi reached up to straighten his collar, her fingers brushing against the warm skin of his neck. See that you do. We've all put too much work into this place to have anything happen now. Something flickered in Isaac's eyes at her slip, a warmth that made her pulse quicken. For a moment she thought he might say more, but he simply nodded and mounted his horse. Lock your doors tonight, he advised. I'll return tomorrow with news from Jed. Naomi watched him ride away. The sense of foreboding Blackwell had instilled warring with a different kind of tension that had been building between her and Isaac, something unspoken, but increasingly difficult to ignore. That night, sleep eluded her. Every creak of the new house settling, every whisper of wind against the windows, had her reaching for her father's shotgun. By dawn, she was exhausted but resolute. Blackwell would not intimidate her into abandoning her home. As morning light filled the house, Naomi threw herself into domestic tasks, hanging curtains, organizing her small library, planning a garden plot where her mother's roses might grow again someday. The physical work kept darker thoughts at bay. Mid-morning brought an unexpected visitor. A wagon pulled up before the house, driven by a young woman Naomi recognized from her brief time in Preston. Rebecca Taylor, the schoolteacher, Miss Evans, she called, climbing down from the wagon seat. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Naomi replied, surprised but pleased by the visit. Female company was a rarity in her new life. Please, come in. Rebecca was perhaps a year or two younger than Naomi, with auburn hair neatly pinned beneath a practical bonnet and intelligent eyes that took in the new house with appreciation. What a lovely home, she said as Naomi ushered her inside. I've been meaning to call on you since I heard you were rebuilding. Isaac mentioned it when he came to the school about donating books. Isaac visits the school? This was news to Naomi. Rebecca nodded, accepting a seat and the offered cup of coffee. He's quite supportive of education, brings books whenever he travels to larger towns, and he's teaching some of the older boys about animal husbandry. This glimpse of Isaac's life beyond their shared project warmed Naomi. That's very kind of him. He speaks highly of you, Rebecca continued, her direct gaze assessing Naomi over the rim of her cup. Says you're the bravest woman he's ever met. Naomi felt heat rise to her cheeks. He exaggerates. I don't think he does, Rebecca said simply. Not many would rebuild after such tragedy. The conversation turned to more general topics: life in Preston, Rebecca's experiences as a teacher on the frontier, Naomi's plans for her property. It was refreshing to speak with another woman close to her own age, and Naomi found herself relaxing for the first time since Blackwell's threatening visit. As Rebecca prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. "May I speak plainly, Miss Evans?" "Please do," Naomi encouraged. "And call me Naomi." "Naomi, then," Rebecca smiled briefly. "I should warn you that there's talk in town about you and Isaac, living alone out here with him visiting regularly. People speculate." Naomi stiffened. "There's nothing improper, I know that," Rebecca assured her quickly. "But frontier communities can be judgmental. I thought you should be aware." "Thank you," Naomi said after a moment, appreciating the other woman's candor. "I hadn't considered how it might appear." Rebecca squeezed her hand. "For what it's worth, I think Isaac Hart is one of the good ones. And goodness knows we women have few enough allies out here without rejecting them over mere gossip." After Rebecca left, Naomi found herself dwelling on their conversation. The idea that people might be talking about her and Isaac in romantic terms was unsettling, not because it was offensive, but because it brought her own confused feelings to the surface. She cared for him. That much was undeniable. His steadfast support, his integrity, his quiet strength all had become essential parts of her new life. But was it gratitude she felt, or something deeper? And what of Isaac's feelings? He had never spoken of her in terms beyond friendship and partnership, though sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression that made her wonder. These thoughts occupied her through the afternoon as she continued organizing her new home. By the time she spotted a rider approaching from the direction of Triple Creek, the sun was low in the sky, but it wasn't Isaac. Elijah Pearson dismounted stiffly in the yard, his expression grave. Naomi's heart stuttered as she hurried to meet him. "Mr. Pearson, what's wrong?" "It's Isaac," he said without preamble. "There's been an accident, or what they're calling an accident." Fear gripped her. He's alive," Pearson assured her quickly. "But hurt. Someone took a shot at him on the trail between Preston and Triple Creek. Bullet grazed his side. He lost blood, but the doctor says he'll recover." Relief washed over Naomi, quickly followed by rage. "Blackwell," she said, the name a curse on her lips. "That's my thought as well," Pearson nodded grimly. "Though there's no proof, of course." "When did this happen?" "This morning." "Isaac had ridden to Preston to arrange a lumber delivery for your barn." Pearson hesitated. "He's asking for you, that's why I came," Martha thought. "Well, we both thought you'd want to know." "I'll come immediately," Naomi said, already turning toward the house to gather what she might need. "What about your property?" Pearson asked. "After what happened to Isaac, it might not be safe to leave it unattended." Naomi paused, torn between her desire to see Isaac and her determination not to be driven from her home. "Tom and Miguel are still here," she said after a moment. "I'll ask them to keep watch." An hour later, Naomi was riding beside Pearson toward Triple Creek, her mind filled with worry for Isaac and fury at Blackwell. The man had escalated from threats to violence, confirming her worst suspicions about his involvement in the fire that had claimed her parents. Darkness had fallen by the time they reached the ranch. Martha met them at the door, her normally composed face lined with concern. "He's resting," she told Naomi, leading her inside. "Dr. Simmons left about an hour ago, said Isaac was lucky the bullet just grazed his ribs, a few inches to the right." She didn't finish the thought. "Can I see him?" Naomi asked, removing her hat and gloves with trembling fingers. Martha nodded. "He's in the guest room down the hall, been asking for you since they brought him in." Naomi followed Martha's directions, pausing outside the closed door to gather herself. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly. "Come in," Isaac's voice called, sounding weaker than she'd ever heard it. He was propped up on pillows, his torso wrapped in bandages, his face pale beneath his tan. But his eyes brightened when he saw her, and he attempted to sit up straighter, wincing at the movement. "Don't," Naomi said quickly, crossing to his bedside. "Please stay still." Isaac subsided with a grimace. Not exactly how I plan to spend the day. Despite her worry, Naomi found herself smiling at his understated humor. Mr. Pearson told me what happened, Blackwell. Almost certainly, Isaac confirmed, his expression hardening. Though it was a stranger who fired the shot, hired gun most likely. Naomi sank into the chair beside the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. This is because of me, because you're helping me. No, Isaac said firmly, reaching for her hand. His palm was warm against hers, his grip strong despite his injury. This is because of Blackwell's greed, nothing more. But if you hadn't promised to help me rebuild, I don't regret that promise, he interrupted, not for a moment. The intensity in his voice made her look up, meeting his gaze. What she saw there caused her breath to catch concern, certainly, but also something deeper, something that mirrored the confusion in her own heart. Isaac, she began, uncertain what she meant to say. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Martha entered with a tray bearing soup and bread. You need to eat, she told Isaac firmly, and then rest, doctor's orders. Naomi withdrew her hand from Isaac's, aware of Martha's observant eyes. I should let you eat, she said, rising. Will you stay? Isaac asked. At Triple Creek, I mean, at least until we know more about what Blackwell might do next. The thought of returning to her isolated homestead was daunting, especially with the knowledge that Blackwell had escalated to violence. But surrendering to fear felt like giving him exactly what he wanted. I'll stay tonight, she compromised. But tomorrow I need to go back. I won't be driven from my home. Isaac didn't look happy with this decision, but he nodded. We'll figure something out, together. That night, in the same guest room she had occupied during her previous stay at Triple Creek, Naomi found sleep elusive once again. Her mind circled between worry for Isaac, anger at Blackwell, and confusion about her own heart's yearnings. She rose before dawn, driven by restlessness, and made her way to the kitchen. To her surprise, Isaac was already there, seated at the table with a cup of coffee, dressed but moving stiffly. You should be resting, she admonished, though secretly pleased to see him up. Tired of lying down, he replied. Coffee, she accepted a cup and joined him at the table. The house was quiet, the Pearsons and ranch hands still sleeping. I've been thinking, Isaac said after a moment, about Blackwell and how to protect you. I'm more concerned about protecting you at the moment, Naomi countered. You're the one who was shot. A small smile touched his lips. Fair point, but I heal fast. His expression grew serious. Naomi, Blackwell won't stop, not until he gets what he wants or until someone stops him. And how do we do that? She asked, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. Without proof of his crimes, he's untouchable. Maybe not, Isaac said slowly. I spoke with Jed, the former Blackwell hand, before I went to Preston yesterday. He's willing to talk. Says Blackwell ordered him to scout your property the day of the fire, looking for vulnerabilities. Hope flared in Naomi's chest. That's evidence? It's a start, Isaac cautioned. Jed's word against Blackwell's, but combined with the attempt on my life so soon after Blackwell's threats. We need to go to the territorial marshal, Naomi decided. Not the local sheriff, someone outside Blackwell's influence. Isaac nodded. Marshal Dawson is a good man, incorruptible. If anyone will listen, it's him. They spent the morning formulating a plan. Jed would provide a sworn statement about Blackwell's involvement in scouting the Evans property before the fire. Isaac would testify about Blackwell's threats and the subsequent attempt on his life. Naomi would recount her own confrontation with Blackwell and his implicit admission of guilt. It might be enough to prompt an investigation, Isaac concluded, but Blackwell won't go down without a fight. Neither will I, Naomi said firmly. He took my parents, my home. I won't let him take anything else. Isaac studied her across the table, admiration evident in his gaze. You're remarkable, you know that. The compliment warmed her more than it should have. I'm just stubborn like my father. It's more than that. Isaac leaned forward, wincing slightly at the movement. You've faced loss that would break most people. Instead, you're rebuilding, fighting back. He paused, searching for words. It's inspiring. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken emotions. Naomi found herself noticing details she'd previously overlooked: the small scar at the corner of his mouth, the way his eyes crinkled when he was thinking deeply, the steady strength in his hands that had helped her rebuild her life. Martha's entrance broke the spell. Isaac Hart. "You should be in bed, not sitting up making eyes at," she caught herself, looking embarrassed. "I mean, the doctor said rest was essential." "I am resting," Isaac protested mildly, "just vertically instead of horizontally." Martha snorted, unconvinced, and began preparing breakfast. But her interruption had shifted the mood, and the moment of connection was lost. Later that morning, against both Martha's and Naomi's objections, Isaac insisted on accompanying Naomi back to her homestead. "I'll rest when I get there," he promised. "But I'm not letting you ride alone, not with Blackwell's men possibly watching the trails." Pearson supported Isaac's decision, though he insisted on sending 2 additional ranch hands as escort. The journey was slower than usual, accommodating Isaac's condition but uneventful. When they arrived at the Evans property, Tom and Miguel reported that all had been quiet during Naomi's absence. "No visitors, no suspicious activity," Tom assured them, "though we kept watch in shifts through the night, just in case." Isaac dismounted carefully, his face betraying his discomfort despite his attempts to hide it. Naomi hovered nearby, ready to assist if needed, but respecting his pride enough not to offer help he hadn't requested. "You should lie down," she suggested once they were inside the house. "I will," he agreed, surprising her with his lack of resistance. "But first, there's something I need to say." Naomi waited, suddenly nervous at his serious tone. "This situation with Blackwell, it's dangerous," Isaac began. "More dangerous than I initially thought. He's shown he's willing to kill to get what he wants." "I know that," Naomi said softly. "I've always known it since the fire. What I'm trying to say is..." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd come to recognize. "I don't think you should stay here alone." "Not until Blackwell is dealt with," Naomi bristled slightly. "I'm not abandoning my home, not again." "I'm not asking you to," Isaac clarified quickly. "I'm asking." He took a deep breath. "I'm asking if I can stay here with you." The implications of his request hung in the air between them. A single woman and an unmarried man sharing a house, even with the best of intentions, would be scandalous by frontier standards. "Isaac," Naomi said carefully, "you know what people would say." "I do." His gaze was steady. "And normally I'd respect those conventions. But these aren't normal circumstances. Your safety matters more than gossip." The practical part of Naomi knew he was right. Alone, she was vulnerable to whatever Blackwell might attempt next, and Isaac's presence would be a powerful deterrent. But there was another consideration, one she was reluctant to voice, but couldn't ignore. Being in close proximity to Isaac, day and night, would make it increasingly difficult to maintain the careful boundaries she'd established around her growing feelings for him. "What about your work at Triple Creek?" she asked, stalling for time to think. "Pearson understands the situation. He's given me leave to stay as long as necessary." Isaac moved closer, his voice softening. "Naomi, please. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because I wasn't here to prevent it." The naked concern in his voice undid her resistance. "All right," she agreed, "but we'll need to be discreet, and you'll take the spare bedroom." Relief washed over his features. "Thank you. And I promise to be a gentleman." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Naomi found herself smiling. "I never doubted that, Isaac Hart." The next few days established a new routine. Isaac slept in the small second bedroom, his injury healing gradually under Naomi's careful attention. During the day, he supervised the continuing work on the barn from the porch, his forced inactivity clearly frustrating him but necessary for his recovery. Naomi divided her time between household tasks and riding to neighboring properties to introduce herself. The latter was Isaac's suggestion, a way to establish allies in the area who might notice suspicious activities around her land. The Dawsons, whose small farm bordered her eastern property line, were particularly welcoming. Mary Dawson, a sturdy woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense manner and kind eyes, immediately invited Naomi to join the weekly quilting circle in Preston. "Frontier women need to stick together," she declared. "Too much hardship out here to face alone." Her husband, Frank, offered to help with the barn raising once the framework was complete. "Neighbors help neighbors," he said simply. "Always been the way of things." Naomi returned from these visits with a growing sense of community she hadn't expected to find. The isolation that had threatened to engulf her after her parents' deaths was gradually receding, replaced by new connections and possibilities. In the evenings, she and Isaac would sit on the porch, watching the sunset and discussing the day's events. These quiet moments became precious to Naomi, a time of companionship and increasing closeness that felt both natural and inevitable. On the fourth night, as twilight deepened into darkness, Isaac broke their comfortable silence with a question. "Do you ever think about what happens after?" Naomi echoed, turning to look at him in the fading light. "After the barn is finished, after we deal with Blackwell." His profile was thoughtful as he gazed out at the darkening land. "What you'll do with this place?" Naomi considered the question. "I haven't thought that far ahead," she admitted. "Just rebuilding, surviving. It's taken all my focus." Isaac nodded. "Understandable, but the land needs more than buildings. It needs livestock, crops, a future." "Are you suggesting I can't manage it alone?" There was no defensiveness in her tone, only curiosity. "Not at all," he assured her quickly. "You're more than capable. He hesitated. "I've been thinking about our partnership, the water rights agreement, wondering if perhaps there could be more to it." Naomi's pulse quickened. "More." Isaac turned to face her fully now, his expression earnest in the gathering darkness. "Triple Creek's expansion plans include cattle. Your land would be ideal for grazing. We could share resources, labor, make both properties more profitable than either would be alone." "Oh," Naomi said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course he was talking about business. That's worth considering." Isaac seemed to sense her deflation. "That's not all I meant," he said quietly. Before he could elaborate, the sound of approaching horses interrupted the moment. Both tensed, alert to potential danger, but it was Tom's voice that called out from the yard. "Miss Evans, Mr. Hart, Marshal Dawson's here to see you." Relief and anticipation coursed through Naomi as she and Isaac rose to greet the newcomer. The territorial marshal was a tall, lean man with a weathered face and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. He dismounted with the ease of a man who spent more time on horseback than off it. "Miss Evans," he said, removing his hat. "Mr. Hart, apologies for the late hour. I came as soon as I received your message and Mr. Collins' statement." "Thank you for coming, Marshal," Isaac said, stepping forward to shake the lawman's hand. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow at the earliest." "Matters involving Josiah Blackwell tend to require immediate attention," Dawson replied grimly. "May we speak inside?" Over coffee at Naomi's kitchen table, they laid out everything. The suspicious circumstances of the fire, Blackwell's threats, the attempt on Isaac's life, and Jed Collins' testimony about being ordered to scout the Evans property. Dawson listened without interruption, occasionally making notes in a small book. When they finished, he sat back, his expression grave. "You've presented a compelling case," he said finally. "Certainly enough to justify a full investigation. But I won't mince words. Blackwell is powerful, with connections that reach to the territorial governor. This won't be easy." "We understand the risks," Naomi said firmly, "but my parents deserve justice." Dawson studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll begin immediately. In the meantime, I suggest you both remain vigilant. If Blackwell suspects he's being investigated, he might become desperate." "We've taken precautions," Isaac assured him. "Good." Dawson rose to leave. "I'll return when I have news. It might take time to build a case that will stand in court." As they walked the marshal to his horse, he paused, looking back at the half-built barn and the new house. "You've accomplished a lot in a short time, Miss Evans. Your parents would be proud." The simple statement, delivered with quiet sincerity, brought unexpected tears to Naomi's eyes. "Thank you, Marshall." After Dawson departed, Naomi and Isaac returned to the porch, the earlier mood of potential revelation replaced by cautious optimism about the Marshall's involvement. "It's a beginning," Isaac said, sensing her thoughts. "Dawson is thorough and incorruptible. If anyone can bring Blackwell to justice, it's him." Naomi nodded, leaning against the porch rail. "I just hope it's enough, that Jed's testimony is strong enough." "We'll find more evidence if needed," Isaac promised. "Blackwell has enemies, people who have been hurt by his methods. They might come forward once they know Dawson is investigating." The night was peaceful, stars scattered across the black canvas of sky, the soft sounds of nocturnal creatures creating a gentle symphony around them. Standing beside Isaac in this moment of shared purpose, Naomi felt a certainty she hadn't experienced since before the fire. Whatever happened next, she wasn't alone. "You never finished what you were saying," she said after a comfortable silence had stretched between them. "About there being more to our partnership." Isaac turned toward her, his expression impossible to read in the darkness. "No, I didn't." He was close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, smell the clean scent of soap and leather that she'd come to associate with his presence. "Naomi," he began, his voice low, "these past weeks, working alongside you, watching you rebuild your life with such courage, it's changed me." Her heart fluttered like a captured bird. "Changed you how?" "Made me want things I thought I'd given up on. A home, roots." He paused, then added softly, "Someone to share them with." The implication was clear, but Naomi needed more than implication. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I care for you," Isaac interrupted, the words coming in a rush now. "More than as a friend or business partner. And I hope you might feel something similar for me." The confession hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Naomi stood perfectly still, absorbing the reality of words she had both hoped for and feared. "Isaac," she began carefully, "my life has been chaos since the fire. Grief, anger, fear, it's all mixed together. I'm not sure I can trust my feelings right now." "I understand," he said, disappointment evident in his voice though he tried to hide it. "It's too soon. I shouldn't have spoken." "No," Naomi said quickly, reaching for his hand. "That's not what I meant. I'm saying I need to be certain that what I feel for you isn't just gratitude or a response to your kindness when I needed it most." Hope returned to his expression. "And what do you feel?" The directness of the question demanded equal honesty in return. "Warmth," she said softly. "Safety. A sense of possibility I thought had burned away with everything else." She took a deep breath. "When I imagine the future of this place now, you're always part of that picture." Isaac's hand tightened around hers. "I'd like to be," he said simply, "part of your future if you'll have me." The moment called for a decision not about forever, perhaps, but about the next step on a path they seemed destined to walk together. "I'd like that too," Naomi admitted, feeling as if she'd stepped off a cliff and found wings instead of falling. Isaac's smile was radiant even in the darkness. He raised his free hand to her face, his touch gentle as he brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "May I kiss you, Naomi Evans?" Her answer was to rise on tiptoe, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers with a tenderness that made her heart ache, a first kiss that felt like a promise, a beginning. When they parted, Isaac rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her skin. "I've wanted to do that since the day you accepted my offer to rebuild." Naomi laughed softly. "That long, and here I thought you were just being noble, helping your old friend's daughter." "I started with noble intentions," he admitted with a chuckle. "But they didn't last past the first time I saw you stand on this land and envision its future with such determination. You're a remarkable woman, Naomi Evans." The night air had grown cooler, but Naomi felt warmed from within. This unexpected gift, love emerging from the ashes of loss, seemed almost too precious to be real. "We should go inside," she said reluctantly. "It's getting late." Isaac nodded but made no move to release her hand. I meant what I said before about being a gentleman. This doesn't change that. His reassurance touched her deeply. I know, she said simply. I trust you, Isaac. The days that followed took on a new quality. The work of rebuilding continued, but now infused with shared glances and brief touches that spoke of deeper feelings. Isaac's injury healed enough that he could take a more active role in the barn construction, though Naomi insisted he avoid heavy lifting. Word came from Marshal Dawson that the investigation was progressing. 2 more former Blackwell employees had come forward with information about questionable activities, including one who claimed to have overheard Blackwell discussing how accidents happen to stubborn people. It's still circumstantial, Isaac cautioned when he shared this news with Naomi. But it's building a pattern. Dawson's optimistic. Meanwhile, life at the homestead settled into a rhythm. The barn neared completion, with neighboring farmers joining in the final raising of the roof beams in the tradition of frontier communities. Naomi planted a garden, including cuttings from her mother's roses that Mary Dawson had miraculously preserved. Your mother gave me these years ago, Mary explained as she helped Naomi plant them along the front of the house. Said every home needs beauty to balance the hardship. I've kept them going, waiting for the right time to return them to where they belong. The gesture brought Naomi to tears, happy ones, for a change. It felt like a benediction from her mother, an approval of the new life she was creating. As summer ripened toward autumn, Naomi and Isaac's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain propriety. Isaac still slept in the spare room, and they were discreet in public but among their closest friends. There was no hiding the bond that had formed between them. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Isaac turned to Naomi with an unusually serious expression. There's something I need to tell you, he said. Something from my past that you should know before we go any further. Naomi tensed slightly, uncertain what revelation might be coming. All right. Isaac took a deep breath. After the war, before I met your father, I wasn't just drifting, I was running. From what? Naomi asked softly. From myself, mostly. His gaze was distant, looking back at a past Naomi could only imagine. The war changed me. I did things, saw things, that haunted me. When I came home to Missouri, I found my father had died, our business sold to pay debts. I had nothing left, no family, no purpose. Naomi reached for his hand, offering silent support as he continued. I started drinking, got in fights. One night it went too far. I nearly killed a man in a barroom brawl. The admission seemed to cost him dearly. He deserved it. He'd been terrorizing a young woman, but that's no excuse for the rage I felt, the darkness that had taken root in me. What happened? Naomi asked, her voice gentle. The sheriff was a fair man, saw that I was a veteran, still battling my own demons. Gave me a choice, jail or leave town and never come back. Isaac's hand tightened around hers. So I left, headed west with no destination in mind. That's when I collapsed on your father's property. And he took you in, Naomi said, pieces falling into place. Isaac nodded. More than that. He saw something in me worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. Talked to me about forgiveness, gods, and our own. A small smile touched his lips. Said a man carrying his past like a stone around his neck would eventually drown under the weight. The image was vivid, so characteristic of her father's practical wisdom. That sounds like Pa. Your father helped me find my way back to myself, Isaac continued. Showed me I could choose a different path. I've tried to live by that choice ever since. Naomi studied him in the fading light, this man who had emerged from darkness to become someone capable of such kindness and integrity. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know who I am, all of me, not just the parts I'm proud of. His eyes met hers, vulnerable and honest. And because I love you, Naomi. I think I've loved you since I found you sitting alone in that church, determined to face whatever came next with the same courage your father showed me years ago. The declaration, simple and heartfelt, washed over Naomi like warm rain. I love you too, she said, the words feeling right, feeling true. Not despite your past, but including it. It's part of what made you the man you are today, the man who kept his promise to help me rebuild. Isaac raised her hand to his lips. I have one more promise I'd like to make if you're willing to hear it. I'm listening, Naomi said, her heart quickening. I promise to love you, protect you, stand beside you through whatever life brings if you'll have me as your husband. Though she had sensed the conversation was leading in this direction, the actual proposal still took her breath away. Are you sure? It hasn't been that long since, I'm sure, Isaac interrupted gently. Some things you just know, like your father knew he could trust me. Like I knew I needed to help you rebuild, like I know I want to spend my life with you. Naomi thought of all they had already weathered together, grief, threats, violence, and through it all, the steady work of building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you, Isaac Hart. His kiss was different this time, still gentle, but with an undercurrent of joy and certainty that matched the feeling expanding in her own chest. When they finally parted, Isaac's smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. I don't have a ring yet, he admitted. This wasn't exactly planned. I don't need a ring, Naomi assured him. Just you. The peaceful moment was shattered by the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders moving fast. Isaac was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the revolver he'd taken to wearing since the attempt on his life. Get inside, he told Naomi, his voice tense. But before she could move, Marshal Dawson's voice called from the darkness. Hart, Miss Evans, it's Dawson. Relief washed over them as the marshal rode into view, accompanied by 3 deputies. Their expressions, visible in the light spilling from the house windows, were grimly satisfied. Marshal, Isaac greeted him, holstering his weapon. What brings you here at this hour? Dawson dismounted, his face showing the fatigue of a long day. Thought you'd want to know immediately. We've arrested Blackwell, Naomi gasped. On what charges? Arson and murder for starters, Dawson replied. One of his men turned state's evidence fellow named Tucker said Blackwell paid him to start the fire in your barn, Miss Evans. Didn't intend for anyone to die, according to Tucker, but Blackwell told him to make sure it spread fast. The confirmation of what she had suspected, but could never prove, left Naomi light-headed. Isaac's arm around her waist steadied her. There's more, Dawson continued. Tucker also implicated Blackwell in the attempt on Mr. Hart's life. Said Blackwell hired a gunman from Fort Worth specifically for the job. Will it be enough to convict him? Isaac asked, his tone cautiously optimistic. With Tucker's testimony and the evidence we've gathered from other former employees. Yes, I believe so. Dawson's expression was solemn. Blackwell won't threaten anyone else after this. The governor himself has taken an interest in the case. The news was everything they had hoped for, yet Naomi found herself unable to feel the triumph she had expected. Justice would be served, but it couldn't bring back her parents or erase the grief of their loss. Thank you, Marshal, she said quietly, for believing us, for pursuing the truth. Dawson nodded, understanding in his eyes. Your parents were good people, Miss Evans. They deserved better. He glanced between her and Isaac, noting their clasped hands. Seems you found some happiness despite everything. I'm glad for that. After declining their offer of refreshments, citing the need to return to town where Blackwell was being held, Dawson and his deputies departed, leaving Naomi and Isaac alone with the momentous news. It's over, Isaac said softly, drawing her close. He can't hurt you anymore. Naomi rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I thought I would feel different, more victorious, I suppose. Grief doesn't end with justice, Isaac said, his voice gentle with understanding, but maybe now it can transform into something else. Memory without pain. The wisdom in his words touched her deeply. When did you get so insightful, Cowboy? She asked, echoing her teasing question from weeks earlier. His chuckle rumbled beneath her ear. Must be the company I keep. They stood together in the quiet aftermath of Dawson's visit, the future spreading before them like the vast Texas sky wide open. full of possibility. "You know," Naomi said after a moment, "we should probably tell the Pearsons about our engagement before they hear it from someone else." Isaac laughed. "Martha will say she knew all along. She's been giving me knowing looks for weeks." "Rebecca Taylor warned me there was gossip in town about us," Naomi admitted. "I suppose we haven't been as discreet as we thought. Hard to hide something this obvious, I guess." Isaac's expression grew more serious. "How soon do you want to marry? I know traditional mourning periods are longer, but life is too uncertain to wait for arbitrary conventions," Naomi interrupted. "My parents would understand that better than most. So I think when the barn is finished, that would be the perfect time," she decided. "A celebration of endings and beginnings." Isaac's smile was tender. "I like the symbolism of that." 3 weeks later, the final beam of the barn roof was secured in place. The structure stood proudly beside the new house, different from what had been lost, but solid and full of promise for the future. The completion coincided with a perfect autumn day, the air crisp but the sun warm. Neighbors from surrounding properties gathered for the barn-raising celebration, which had been secretly expanded to include a wedding. Rebecca Taylor had helped Naomi alter her mother's wedding dress, found carefully packed away in a trunk that had been stored in town when Naomi traveled to visit an aunt the previous year. The simple white gown with its delicate lace trim fit perfectly after Rebecca's skilled adjustments. "Something old," Rebecca said as she helped Naomi dress in the bedroom of the new house, "and I have something borrowed for you too." She fastened a pearl necklace around Naomi's neck. "It was my grandmother's. It's beautiful," Naomi breathed, touching the smooth pearls. "Thank you." Martha Pearson bustled in with a blue ribbon. "For your hair," she explained, her eyes misty. "Something blue." Mary Dawson completed the tradition with a new handkerchief embroidered with Naomi's soon-to-be initials, NH. "Every bride needs something new," she said, pressing it into Naomi's hand. Surrounded by these women who had become friends and supporters through the challenging months of rebuilding, Naomi felt a wave of gratitude that brought tears to her eyes. "Don't cry now," Martha admonished gently. "You'll spoil Rebecca's fine work with the face powder." "Happy tears only," Naomi assured her, blinking them back. Outside, Reverend Phillips had arrived from Cottonwood Springs to perform the ceremony. Isaac waited near the newly completed barn, handsome in a new suit, his expression a mixture of nervousness and joy as he spoke with Elijah Pearson. When Naomi emerged from the house on Frank Dawson's arm, the older man having offered to give her away in her father's absence, a hush fell over the gathered crowd. Isaac turned, and the look that crossed his face at the sight of her was one Naomi knew she would remember until her dying day. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful. They exchanged vows beneath a bower of autumn flowers constructed by Mary Dawson and the other women of the quilting circle. Isaac's voice was steady as he promised to love, honor, and cherish her for all his days. Naomi's was clear and sure as she made the same vows in return. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder," Reverend Phillips proclaimed, and then with a smile, "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Hart." Isaac's kiss was tender, reverent, a promise sealed before witnesses. The assembled friends and neighbors erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening. Tables groaned under the weight of contributed dishes, fried chicken, cornbread, apple pies, and more. A fiddler from Preston played lively tunes that had children and adults alike dancing in the yard. As twilight descended, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Isaac found Naomi where she stood watching the dancers and drew her slightly away from the crowd. "Happy?" he asked, his arm slipping around her waist. "More than I thought possible 6 months ago," she admitted, leaning into him. "It still feels strange sometimes being happy when they're gone." "They're not entirely gone," Isaac said softly. "I see your father in your determination, your mother in your kindness. They live on in you." The observation, so simple yet profound, eased something in Naomi's heart. That's a lovely way to think of it. Isaac nodded toward the house and barn, solid structures glowing in the lantern light. We did it, kept my promise. Which one? Naomi asked, though she knew the answer. You lost your home to fire and grief, he quoted himself, and now you have both back. We have both back, she corrected gently. This is our home now, our future. Isaac's kiss was a silent affirmation of that shared future, one built on the foundation of loss but reaching toward hope, as sturdy and promising as the new structures that stood as testament to what could be created from ashes. 5 years later, Naomi stood on the porch of the Evans Hart ranch house, watching as two small figures raced across the yard toward the returning riders. Thomas, at 4 years old, was all energy and excitement. Margaret, just 2, toddled determinedly after her brother, refusing to be left behind. "Papa," Thomas called, spotting Isaac among the cowboys returning from the spring cattle drive. "Did you bring me something?" Isaac dismounted in one fluid motion, scooping Thomas up in one arm and reaching for Margaret with the other. "Now, what makes you think I'd forget a present for my best ranch hand?" he teased, his face alight with the joy of homecoming. Naomi moved forward to greet her husband, her heart full at the sight of him with their children. 5 years of marriage had only deepened the love between them, weathering challenges and celebrating triumphs together. The ranch had prospered beyond their expectations. The partnership with Triple Creek had expanded to include a breeding program for superior cattle stock, with Isaac and Naomi eventually buying out Pearson's interest when he decided to retire to San Antonio to be near his grandchildren. The house had grown too, with an added wing to accommodate their growing family and frequent visitors. The barn that had marked their wedding day now anchored a complex of outbuildings that served the thriving operation. Isaac set the children down and turned to Naomi, his smile softening as it always did when he looked at her. "Missed you," he said simply, drawing her into his embrace. "Missed you more," she returned, breathing in the familiar scent of him beneath the dust of the trail. Later, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch swing that had become their favorite spot for quiet conversations. The ranch spread before them, peaceful in the gathering dusk, cattle grazing in distant pastures, crops growing in neatly tended fields, a legacy being built day by day. "I was thinking about your parents today," Isaac said, his arm around her shoulders, "about how proud they'd be of all this, of you." Naomi leaned into him, grateful as always for his understanding of the place her parents still held in her heart. "I thought of them too," she admitted. When Thomas asked that question about why the sky is blue, it's exactly the kind of thing Pa would have loved explaining. Isaac chuckled. "He got your father's curiosity, that's for certain. And Margaret has Ma's green thumb," Naomi added. "Did you see the little garden she's started? Rose clippings from Ma's bushes." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. The rhythm of the swing, the soft sounds of night creatures, the distant lowing of cattle all created a symphony of home that Naomi treasured. "Sometimes I still can't believe it," she said softly. "That we built all this from nothing, that happiness could come after such loss." Isaac's arm tightened around her. "Not from nothing," he corrected gently. "From love, from hope, from refusing to be defeated." Naomi thought of the path that had brought them here, the fire that had taken everything, the grief that had threatened to consume her, the quiet strength of the cowboy who had promised her a new beginning. "You kept your promise," she said, turning to look at him in the fading light. "That day in the church, when you said I'd have my home and my peace back." "Best promise I ever made," Isaac replied, his voice warm with emotion, "except maybe I do." As darkness settled fully around them, Naomi rested her head against her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that what they had built together, home, family, love, was stronger than any loss, more enduring than any grief. From the ashes of her past, a future had risen, not a replacement for what was lost, but something new and equally precious. A testament to resilience, to the human heart's capacity for healing, and to the power of a promise kept.